Good evening and welcome to PJTN Online. I'm your host, Laurie Cardoza-Moore, and I want to thank you all for joining us again this evening, this Wednesday evening, as we bring you the news, the events, current events that are going on with regards to Israel, with regards to anti-Semitism, and our role and responsibility to stand and confront it. And we have a lot of information to share with you tonight. I want to welcome our new guests to PJTN. For those of you who are not familiar with our organization, our mission is to educate Christians about their biblical responsibility to stand with our Jewish brethren and defend the state of Israel against the rise of global anti-Semitism. We accomplish that mission by producing award-winning documentary films and television programs, and then we distribute our programming through our 21 global media partners around the world, reaching 2.6 billion viewers in 200 nations. And I want to thank those of you who have contacted us, who have written emails to us, sending comments about our programs, our Focus on Israel shows, as well as commenting on our PJTN Online. This program is being produced for you, with you in mind, to give you the tools, to give you the information about what really is going on and how we can combat it. As I mentioned, we produce award-winning programming, and of course that programming is impossible without the financial support of so many of our PJTN watchmen and our donors. So I want to thank you again for that support. I also want to encourage you that you can make a generous donation to support this program or any of our other outstanding programs by going to pjtn.org/donate. And you can support PJTN that way. Just to become a watchman is only a minimum of $20 a month to support our mission. So I want to encourage you to go to the website, become a monthly contributor to PJTN, and we'd be happy to send you a welcoming kit into PJTN welcome kit out to you to get that, so you'll have your own little gift that we want to share with you to thank you for your support of everything we do. So our goal this year is to bring on at least 5,000 PJTN watchmen by the end of the year. So again, any contribution would be greatly appreciated. A couple weeks ago, for those of you who have been with us, we did launch our 40-day prayer initiative, and leading into the celebration of Israel's 70th anniversary. And I want to thank those of you who responded and emailed to us. We have changed the format of the program. We have moved the prayer to our social media pages. And so if you'll go to our social media pages, if you set up to like Facebook or follow us on Twitter and Instagram, you will get those daily updates on prayer requests. We try to tie in some current information, the news that is current for the day of what's going on, and then encourage you to pray through that with us. And so we also want to encourage those of you who are praying with PJTN for all of these myriad of issues that we're focused on over the next 40 days. If you have a personal prayer request or a personal prayer need, we want to hear from you. We have a group of intercessors that are committed. They're actually international. And they're committed to pray for PJTN. So as those requests come in, we are sharing those prayers with our international prayer team all over the world, asking for them to join with you in prayer. So I want to thank you for that. Also, I want to just mention that we do have a Israel 70th anniversary special going on right now, and for $70, again, if you go to pjtn.org/donate, for a $70 one-time gift, we're going to send you a beautiful book called Israel Rising. This book was produced by a lead photographer who went and gathered pictures, took pictures of some of the modern day locations of ancient photos, not really ancient, I'm sorry, old photos dating back to the mid 1800s. But the photographer went and photographed all of these locations from the exact standpoint of the original photographer who took the photographs like I said, back in the 1800s, as far back as the 1800s, and put the new picture, the modern picture today, up against the old picture that was taken some over 100 years ago. So it's incredible to look at this book and to see the beautiful images, to see how God has fulfilled prophecy by actually making that desert, that region of the world, bloom. And so that's very exciting to see, and it's a great encouragement. It's a beautiful book. I also just want to remind you that we will include in that package, with your $70 gift, we're going to include a copy of our definitive documentary film, Israel Indivisible, The Case for the Ancient Homeland. And that documentary exposes the historical, archaeological, legal, and biblical rights that Israel has to her ancient homeland. So I hope that, again, you'll consider making that gift, that contribution. And you could also make a donation for family and friends. Both the book and the DVD would make a great gift to share with your loved ones, friends, family, people who maybe don't quite understand Israel and don't really understand the battle that Israel is having to face there all the time, and also the biblical significance. We as Christians, what is our role in the midst of all this? Well, we all know that our mission, our role is to uphold God's word. And God made a covenant to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And of course, we know that that covenant was eternal. It never went away. And God did promise that he would make Abraham like the stars of the heavens and the sands on the seashore. And the land that Israel, unfortunately, doesn't have all of her land, but God told Abraham that the land was part of that covenant. And that land covenant would be there forever. It's eternal. So it's important that we are educated, that we study our Bibles, and that you tune in so that you're getting all the information, so that when you have these conversations with family and friends, you know how to counter the narrative that a lot of them have bought into. And unfortunately, you know, it's a shame to say that a lot of those people have bought into the anti-Semitic, the narrative that Israel is an occupying force. I want to mention that if you would like to order a copy to share with your family and friends, or to have your own 70th anniversary gift from PJTN, just a $70 contribution, we'll put one of those in the mail to you right away. And of course, the books we have a limited offer with the books, but I have autographed with a special note to each person who makes this purchase and makes this contribution. So thank you. I also want to just remind you that this program, again, is produced with you in mind. And so we want to give you the opportunity to tune in every week, to ask questions, make comments. You can do that on Facebook. You can also send private comments or private questions to PJTN at our website at pjtn.org, or you can go to comments at pjtn.org as well. And of course, the obvious, you got to like us on Facebook and share us with your family and friends on Facebook, all your followers. Follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. We're also there as well. And you can also, we make our PJTN YouTube and Vimeo page available to you. You can watch previous programs of PJTN online that you may have missed. We welcome you to do that. But also there's video clips that you can share there with family and friends as well. Tonight's program, we're going to continue our conversation about Israel's 70th Independence Day celebration, but we're also going to focus on some of the main topics of news around the world as it pertains to Israel and the rise of anti-Semitism. Specifically, I want to talk about education. And for those of you who have been following PJTN for some time now, back in 2012, we launched a campaign to expose an anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-Judeo-Christian, anti-West, pro-Islamic textbook, Pearson published textbook, in a Williamson County school. And that story ended up going nationwide. It was picked up by some of the major news outlets like Fox News, and Fox News covered that story for 2 weeks on end, and exposing some of the content of what was being taught to our children through Pearson. And just to give you a little background about Pearson Publishers, Pearson is the largest textbook publishing company in the United States of America. 60% of Pearson's sales come out of the U.S. And of course, their shareholders include Qatar, Libya, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. So these countries do not have America's Western views or our interests in mind. They are major shareholders. They fund this Pearson Publishers. Pearson is based out of Great Britain. They're not even U.S. based, so that's even further troubling that this is not a U.S. based textbook publishing company. And on top of that, Pearson has bought up 80% of the textbook publishing companies in the United States. Pearson is also behind Common Core. I know many of you who tune into this show are very involved in what's going on in our communities and in our schools. And Pearson Publishers, of course, purchasing all of these textbook publishing companies and being the company to establish the standards to which our children are educated in our states. Pearson also is being behind Common Core. They are also providing the testing. In Tennessee last week, we had a huge problem with Tennessee Ready tests. A lot of people are finding that the states, there were 37 states that actually adopted Common Core under Obama. And of course, Obama dangled the carrot in front of these states and promised them federal funding if they would adopt these standards into their state standards. And what has happened is unfortunately, these state standards, they've changed the name, suggesting that Common Core is no longer being used. And unfortunately, it's the same set of standards. It's just been given a new name. So we have to be very vigilant. We have to be paying attention to what our children are learning in our schools, because remember, our children are our future. So I wanted to just start with an article that I want to share with you. The article actually came out in March, but it's important to share. I found this dear friend, and I also just want to mention to you, a lot of the information that we get are from our supporters. If you come across an article that you've heard us about, a topic that you've heard us talk about on this show or any of our programs, if you're watching our Focus on Israel shows, I want to encourage you to please forward that article to our comments at pjtn.org. So that we have this information, because I can only remember, ladies and gentlemen, I can only be, one place at a time, but having our PJTN watchmen out there watching out for us, this is so critically important. And, as a watchman, I hope that you don't take a PJTN watchman as just, a nice little slogan or name that we've given our supporters. It means so much more than that. And actually, the PJTN Watchman was established based on, in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 33, when God warned Ezekiel, he said to tell the watchman that when he brings destruction upon a city, and the watchman sees the enemy advancing, but fails to warn the inhabitants of the city, and if any innocent people die, then it will be required of that watchman. However, if the watchman sees the enemy advancing, warns the inhabitants, and the inhabitants refuse to heed the warning, and if their blood is spilled, it will be required of them. We do not take lightly that role as PJTN watchmen. We can't be everywhere and see everything, but you can. As a watchman, you have a biblical obligation to sound the alarm in your community, to let organizations, let me know what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what you're finding, because it's all of these situations combined. This is how we build the momentum. This is how we're able to influence and change what's happening in our state legislatures and what's happening in our schools. It's because the PJTN Watchmen are made aware of these circumstances or these situations, and they get involved. And so again, we can't do it without you. So please consider becoming a watchman. Again, just a monthly donation, committing to sign up to make a monthly donation to help us to do this work, to bring this information to you and to millions all over the world. It's critically important. It's our responsibility in our generation. So having said that, I want to just share with you this article that was sent to me by one of our PJTN watchmen. And it's about the Islamist Qatar buys American teachers. Now, I just mentioned that Qatar is one of the shareholders of Pearson Publishers. So keeping that in mind, I want to just share with you what we found in this article. The article was dated back at the beginning of March, but the incident, the organization Qatar Foundation International, in January of this year, sponsored a continuing education event titled Middle East 101 for public school teachers in Phoenix, Arizona. It was hosted, get this, by the Arizona Department of Education. This is the state legislature. The state legislature governs the Department of Education in each respective state. So for those of you who are tuning in from Arizona, or really from any state in the United States, it is the Department of Education that is responsible for the standards and the curriculum that our children are using in our schools. So please keep that in mind as I share with you some of the information we found in this article. But it says that it was not surprising, given that the Qatar Foundation International has donated over $450,000 to Arizona public schools, over $30 million to public schools across the country. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. $450,000 was contributed to by the Qatar Foundation International, which is a education. They have a Middle East 101 program for public schools in the United States. This public school system happens to be in Phoenix, Arizona. They received $450,000, but over $30 million was distributed to other public schools across the country. That should make all of us very disturbed. Unfortunately, there was a good deal of interesting material. Teachers also got a large helping of Islamist propaganda designed to influence American school children and ultimately to advance Qatari foreign policy. The Qatar Foundation International Program Officer, Craig Kanjemi, introduced the program as an American member of the organization, and he blandly described the organization as a private education-focused foundation in Doha, Qatar. The article goes on to say that the Qatar Foundation schools and mosques this is in Qatar, often host the most virulently radical Islamist preachers, including one who referred to the 9/11 attacks as a comedy film. Another who said that Jews bake Passover matzah with human blood, believing that this brings them close to their false god. Now, this is what Qatar puts out. And a third who accused the Shia of poisoning and sorcery. Now, within the Islam world, there's the Sunnis and the Shias. And so there's no love lost for the Shia members of the Islamic community by Qatar. The article goes on to say a featured lecturer of the Qatar Foundation, who is backed Qatar Faculty of Islamic Studies, was Mohammed El Mokhtar El Shinkiti, who is currently a professor at the Qatar Foundation's flagship, Hamid bin Khalifa University. Al-Shinkiti was once an imam at a West Texas mosque, where he openly encouraged young people to engage in terror attacks against Israel and Egypt. The dean of the Qatar Foundation's College of Islamic Studies is Imad al-Din Shaheen, a member of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, whose prominence led Egypt's military regime to sentence him to death in absentia. So this is, the article goes on to say, even tangentially, mentioning the existence, this is in their schools, in Qatar schools, mentioning the existence of Israel or the Holocaust in class would provoke severe reprisals from the Qatari Ministry of Education. The official government policy was Israel does not exist. So this is, again, I just want to restate to you, Qatar is one of the shareholders of Pearson Publishers. Qatar is spreading over $300 million in funds to these schools, to public schools across the United States, like Arizona. In fact, you could probably do a little digging in your own state legislature, and you may very well find funding from this Qatar Foundation also, along with their influence, their curriculum, their propaganda that they're promoting to our children and changing the fabric. So you may wonder, what all of this does to our children. There's another article that I want to share with you about CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. And if you were with us last week, we talked about how there is a lawsuit by plaintiffs in San Diego Unified School District who are suing the school district because they're allowing CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, to indoctrinate their children with propaganda. So as we talked about the Qatar Foundation, let's talk a little bit about CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. CARE was listed back in 2007 in the Holy Land Foundation trial as an unindicted co-conspirator in the largest terrorist fundraising operation in the history of the United States of America. It amazes me to no end that CARE is still allowed to even operate as an organization in this country. Not only are they allowed to operate as an organization, but during the last administration with Obama had advisors who were members of CARE. Remember, CARE is also an arm of the Muslim Brotherhood, of Hamas. Their intent for the United States is not to strengthen our Western values. It is to destroy our country from within. And in fact, in some of the documents that were found, that the FBI found in its research as they were investigating CARE's involvement with the Holy Land Foundation trial, they found a strategy by the Muslim Brotherhood to take down America. And one of the ways, ladies and gentlemen, that they are destroying our country is through the next generation, our children. You've heard me restate in the book of Joel, chapter 1, verse 3, that verse where God tells the prophet Joel that they are to teach the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, and what God did for Israel when he led them out of Egypt. We were to teach these truths to our children and our children's children throughout their generations. Unfortunately, since 1962, we can't even add God. We took prayer out of schools. However, in recent years, we've put prayer back in schools, but not the prayer to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God that Christians and Jews both worship. No, now we're teaching our children how to pray prayers to Allah, and that is very, very disconcerting, especially because allowing the content that is being used to teach our children, whether it's in the textbooks, whether it's in the instructional materials, violates our U.S. and our state constitutions, because they are favoring the establishment of one religion over all others. We find textbooks that have numerous pages dedicated to Islam. One textbook we found in Tennessee had 37 pages. There's also another survey that came out stating 41% of Americans don't know what Auschwitz is. Many Americans lack basic knowledge about the Holocaust, a stat many say could hold grave consequences, according to survey results released on Thursday. The survey found that nearly half of all Americans, 41%, couldn't identify Auschwitz, a concentration camp where an estimated 1.1 million Jews and minorities were killed at the hands of Nazis during World War II. Among millennials, that number rose to 66%. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, this is disturbing information. It's disturbing to find out that, unfortunately, we are not giving our children a proper education. Moving on, I also want to share with you some new developments that are happening, which are positive, and these positive changes are going to make a difference for us and, of course, in education as well, what we're teaching our children. But there was an article that came out last week mentioning that the U.S. State Department stops referring to Judea and Samaria as occupied. In a U.S. State Department, the article reads that in a U.S. State Department annual report on human rights, the controversial term occupied was largely eliminated in references to various territories in and adjacent to Israel, while the term occupied had been used in such reports since the Carter administration. The 2017 version drops this term, which is generally used pejoratively to criticize Israeli policy following military victories through which the Jewish state acquired control of various territories. The change comes after U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman advised the department in December to stop using the misleading term occupied in references to Judea and Samaria. Friedman remarked in an interview, "I think the settlements in Judea and Samaria are part of Israel," which we agree as Christians. It says it in the Bible, which was always the exception when the United Nations Resolution 242 was adopted. He added the 1967 borders were viewed by everybody as not secure. There was always supposed to be some expectation of Israeli expansion into Judea and Samaria. The term occupied is considered by many to be a loaded phrase intended to demonize Israel with regard to its activities in disputed areas. According to the policy expert Dan Diker of the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, Friedman, quote, Friedman is advancing Trump administration policy to correct past mistakes, and misconceptions of American diplomats. Since the Oslo Accords in 1995, the most densely Palestinian populated areas in the territories are designated as Area A and Area B, which are under Palestinian autonomy and are certainly not legally occupied. Mark Zell, who heads Republicans in Israel, commented to World Israel News in December that Ambassador Friedman is fighting back against bureaucratic inertia and State Department Erebus. In response to the State Department's subsequent change in terminology, Israel's Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman tweeted over the weekend, quote, "The lie of the occupied Palestinian territories begins to be revealed. They say that a lie repeated often enough becomes true, but the truth is forever stronger." The State Department report is proof of that. And I just want to share with you, ladies and gentlemen, some of you may be aware, but former Prime Minister of Israel, Menachem Begin, once said that these territories are not disputed territories. They are liberated territories. And I have always said that God established that the nation of Israel would be given to the Jewish people by covenant, by contract. And he cut that deal with Abraham back in the book of Genesis. When the United Nations came in and voted to partition and give Israel a place back in her ancient homeland, the United Nations ratified what God did all those years ago. That is the perspective that we should take as Jews, as Christians, as all people of conscience. There is a history there. And the Jewish people were given that land. Their capital is Jerusalem. It will always be eternally Jerusalem. And so it's encouraging to see that President Trump is putting these policies in place. He is changing the narrative within the State Department, which is so critically important. And God willing, President Trump will continue to do that in our education system. He'll encourage that in our education system. Moving on, more news this week. Those of you who've been following what's going on in Hollywood, unfortunately, Natalie Portman, who is admired by many of our millennials, decided to leave or not receive the Genesis Award. She made an exodus from Genesis, the Genesis Award. And it's unfortunate that she chose to do that. I was extremely disappointed when I saw that. Natalie Portman, for those of you who know, that she is Israeli born, and she's been a star of many a major motion picture. And it's unfortunate to see that she is turning her back, that she's actually supporting the BDS movement by boycotting the Genesis Award, or the awards. She says, of course, it's because she was protesting the Prime Minister of Israel because of his recent actions in Gaza. Well, unfortunately, Natalie hasn't been in Israel for a long time. She should go back, and she should maybe go stand there on the border with Gaza to see what the IDF are having to contend with. And unfortunately, her comment does more to hurt and to damage, plus let alone the fact that the organizations that would have benefited from her participation are not going to receive funding as a result of her unwillingness. So that was a huge disappointment. She has a lot of influence in the media, especially with our millennials, and so it's critically important that we get this information out. But moving on, I want to just talk to you about Europe is facing a higher rise in anti-Semitism. In fact, there was a report that came out stating that, or an article that came out, that Europe's Jews are facing resurgent anti-Semitism, highest levels since the Second World War. And ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who've been following PJTN, one of the reasons why we started the organization back in 2005 was to educate Christians, because we knew that one day there was going to be an increase in anti-Semitic incidents. And unfortunately, history bears that out. And here we are living in 2018, and you would think that we would have done away with anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, it is far from the case. And so Europe is seeing a resurgence in that. There was an incident last week in Germany where a Jewish man was attacked in Berlin. He was an Israeli Arab who didn't believe Germany was anti-Semitic. And so he decided to put on a kippah, or a Jewish skull cap, and he was attacked by I believe it was an Arab. Let me just find this article. It was actually a Syrian asylum seeker who ended up turning himself in for attacking that Israeli Arab. And of course, the victim who had been attacked did not think that Europe was still anti-Semitic, that there would be a problem. And he found out the hard way. And of course, as I said, the Syrian asylum seeker turned himself in, and so we'll see what ends up happening. But the amazing thing to me is what Angela Merkel, the president of Germany, has said. And there was another article that has come out basically stating that Germany its leadership in particular is infamous for its persecution of Jews to the extent of attempting the unthinkable under Adolf Hitler's reign, the final solution. So we know Germany has that history. But even in my involvement at the United Nations and working with the German UN mission, they are very alert, very acutely aware of what can happen when a country turns its back on anti-Semitism and targeting Jews. And it's unfortunate that they will have to carry that. But it's more important that we understand and we learn from the mistakes. Europe unfortunately brought in many Islamic or Muslim immigrants who came from war-torn Syria and other regions surrounding that area. And unfortunately, these people, there was no way to vet these people as to whether they were legitimate. Many of the people that came over were men between the ages of 18 and 24 who could have stayed in Syria to fight. And unfortunately, they bailed out. So what does that say about those men, those Muslim men? They don't care about fighting. They came over here, and unfortunately, we see the anti-Semitism on the rise. We see terrorist attacks on the rise throughout Europe because the leaders failed to think through what they should have done. They should have taken those people. They should have, the world leaders should have financially supported the other Arab countries that surround Syria and that area to absorb these immigrants that were trying to flee for their lives, their families, just like Jordan did. Jordan took in 2 million, and they've housed them, and the world helps with those expenses. That's what should have occurred. And unfortunately, is it ignorance? Is it willful blindness that caused them to make a choice that now they're paying for? I guess you have to ask the leaders of those countries. And then in my closing comments, I want to talk about some state legislation that's going on here across the country that is also positive and some not so positive. But I first want to just mention South Carolina and give the leadership in South Carolina, Alan Clemens, one of the state representatives, who has been pushing the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act in South Carolina. They became the first state to pass this legislation. So we want to thank the governor and the state legislature for taking this initiative on. This is so important. Basically, the legislation was to adopt the U.S. State Department's definition of what constitutes anti-Semitism in order to protect the Jewish community, Jewish students on campuses. So that's very exciting. We hope to see more states follow South Carolina's lead. In Tennessee, unfortunately, we were unsuccessful in passing a similar bill. Tennessee is changing. The dynamics of the state and the state legislature are changing, and so is the leadership, where we could once count on a pro-Israel legislature that would pass legislation without any question, without any problem. This past year, we were unable to pass the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act in our state legislature. It was killed. It was actually sent to the Black Hole Education Subcommittee, and it was killed. And unfortunately, sitting on that committee are Christians, and every one of them refused to give it a vote, refused to second the motion so that it could go to the complete committee for a vote. And it's a disturbing trend. There was also a resolution that was killed in the state legislature that would condemn the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists. That bill was killed in a House subcommittee, and I recently found out that the anti-BDS bill, economic and trade bill, that would not do business, where Tennessee would no longer do business with a company that was boycotting, divesting, or sanctioning Israel. We couldn't even get that passed. So it's a disturbing trend to see a once very pro-Israel community, state legislature, a community that we could count on to keep our Jewish community's interests at heart, now we can no longer count on. And you're going to be hearing more about what we're doing in Tennessee in the coming weeks. Another state legislator from Illinois actually called out Tennessee, and I want to share this article with you. He filed an anti-Nazi resolution, and he called out the Tennessee House. The article says, after the Tennessee legislature twice failed to advance resolutions this year to condemn white nationalists and neo-Nazis, an Illinois lawmaker has taken the resolution's text and filed it for himself. But in addition to asking for the Illinois General Assembly to denounce neo-Nazis, Democratic Representative Lou Lang's resolution specifically calls out the House of Representatives in Tennessee. These colleagues need to hold their own colleagues accountable. The Illinois House resolution filed this week alleges that the Tennessee House of Representatives failed to summon sufficient moral courage and basic decency to place itself on the record against such a sinister and pernicious ideology affecting the body politic of the United States. It also states that the House in Tennessee had been cowed by the growing influence of white nationalists and neo-Nazis. The resolution goes on to say that the Illinois legislature wishes to adopt the full text of the initial resolution introduced by Tennessee State Representative John Ray Clemens, who is a Democrat from Nashville. Clemens' resolution died in a House subcommittee in mid-March after he failed to receive a second motion to discuss the resolution. Same thing happened with our Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. We could not get a second motion. They pulled the same tactic on us. Earlier this month, House Republican Caucus Chairman Representative Ryan Williams, Republican of Cookeville in Tennessee, sponsored a nearly identical version of Clemens' resolution that omitted a paragraph urging law enforcement to recognize and pursue white nationalist groups as domestic terrorist organizations. Why would they want to remove them? They are terrorists. They terrorize the community. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Tennessee. Tennessee used to be a very blessed state, but the direction that Tennessee and its legislature, its governing body, is taking, our state, the state of Tennessee, is going to reap unfortunate benefits upon these people. God told Abraham in Genesis 12:3, I will bless those who bless you, and he who ignores you, I will utterly destroy. Tennessee used to enjoy the blessings of Almighty God. We survived the economic collapse of 2008 because of a resolution that was introduced supporting the state of Israel back in 2002 that we introduced and lobbied through the state legislature. Yes, we had some opposition even back then, but Tennessee was we could always count on the votes. We could always count on our state legislature to do the right thing, to do the biblical thing. But even Christians who are state legislators say that have adopted a replacement theology attitude and believe that as Christians, we are not supposed to help the Jews. We're not supposed to support them. That was from a Christian who she felt dignified in what she did. So it's very disturbing to see what's happening, ladies and gentlemen, even to Christians who should know their Bible. Moving on, some more disturbing news in the States. North Carolina became the first to ban police exchanges with Israel. This is in Durham. Unfortunately, the city council in Durham, North Carolina, has voted unanimously to bar the city's police department from international exchanges in which the officers receive military-style training in a slap at such programs held with the Israeli army and police. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is not just Durham, North Carolina. We have been training our military. We have been training police officers in basically tactical terrorist warfare in our communities because of 9/11, because of the growing threat, because of what we've seen. And now, unfortunately, the resolution passed in the city council in Durham, North Carolina, they're not going to send their police officers. So if there's basically sending a message to terrorists that the police department in Durham, North Carolina is not going to be prepared to deal with the terrorist attack. The article goes on to say the resolution, which states that the council opposes international exchanges with any country in which Durham officers receive military-style training, was approved by the council in a 6-0 vote Monday night. There wasn't even one person who objected. It is the first city in the United States to officially ban such training, according to Jewish Voice for Peace, which actively worked to pass the resolution. Born out of a petition created last fall by Jewish Voice for Peace, a group that supports the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement targeting Israel, the resolution brought together several partners under the banner of Demilitarize, from Durham to Palestine. According to the petition, the Israeli Defense Forces and Israel Police have a long history of violence and harm against Palestinian people and Jews of color. Really? It called on the city to immediately halt any partnership that the Durham Police Department has or might enter into with the Israeli Defense Forces and or the Israel Police. According to the City Council resolution, Police Chief C.J. Davis said in a memo to City Manager Tom Bonfield that, quote, there has been no effort while I have served as Chief of Police to initiate or participate in any exchange to Israel. People on both sides of the resolution spoke before the vote, according to the local television station. Some speakers criticized the resolution as anti-Semitic. Others questioned why such a resolution was necessary, since no such exchanges were planned. Former police chief Jose Lopez spent a week in Israel undergoing training under his tenure. He told the council that none of the training involved militarization. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, this is a growing trend. They chose Durham, North Carolina, because they probably had the votes in that city council and they pushed their initiative. This is, again, a very disturbing trend that we see happening in our communities. And ladies and gentlemen, unless we stand up and we speak up, we're going to see more of this occurring in community after community. So I know we're getting ready to wrap up. We're not going to be taking any questions today. This show is actually coming to you. It's a pre-tape that I'm doing. I'm on the road in Florida, meeting with our donors and speaking to leaders as well about all of the initiatives, especially the textbook initiative that we're going to be launching in Florida and in Tennessee and Ohio. So I hope that you'll stay tuned. Again, I hope that you'll sign up. And if you're not getting our emails, I want to encourage you to go to our website at pjtn.org and sign up to get on our mailing list, get our newsletters, our action alerts, and of course, like us on Facebook, and join us here every Wednesday night. Encourage your family and friends. We're here at 6 p.m. Central Time. And again, we're talking about the issues from a biblical perspective. What is our role? What is our responsibility? And we need to make you aware of the things that are going on so you'll be able to engage. I also just want to mention that we need, again, as I mentioned in the opening of the program, we are looking for partners who will partner with PJTN, become a PJTN Watchman. As I said earlier, the role of the PJTN Watchman is critically important. We have a biblical responsibility to warn the inhabitants of our community about the rising threat, and we can't do it without you. You live in your community. You can engage your elected officials. You can engage your school board members and the teachers in your community to fight against the content, the indoctrination of our children in our school textbooks. But again, we're looking for donors who will commit to become a PJTN Watchman and commit to us financially every month to support these initiatives. Our goal, again, We need 5,000 PJTN Watchmen. I hope that you'll share our website and our social media pages with your family and friends and encourage them to join us here. I also want to just remind you our award-winning Focus on Israel program is broadcasting in 200 nations, reaching 2.6 billion viewers globally. And that's through our 21 media partners through the National Religious Broadcasters Convention. Daystar is airing our Focus on Israel show every Sunday night, and you can find Focus on Israel on Daystar. You'll have to check your local listings or your cable network to see what channel it'll air on, but it's on at midnight, 12 a.m. On Eastern time, and then Pacific is 9 p.m. And again, we're getting great feedback from our viewers and all over the globe, and we look forward to hearing your comments as well. Again, God TV airs Focus on Israel on Monday evenings. You'll have to check your local listings again. And of course, if you are interested in attending one of our PJTN events, if you go to our events page on our website, you'll see where I'll be speaking over the next couple of months. We'd love to see you there, love to meet you in person. And also, if you're interested in having me come and speak to your community, your church, your synagogue, one of your civic groups, I'd be happy to come and speak on your college campus even. We've been doing, we just had an event at Belmont University in Nashville, and we had 2 events at Florida Atlantic University back in February in Boca Raton, Florida. So again, I'll be speaking in Cleveland, Ohio coming up June 9th and 10th. And then I'll be back in Central and South Florida July 8th through the 31st. So I hope to see you all there. Remember, our prayer initiative is on our social media sites every day, 40 days of prayer leading up to the 70th anniversary, May 14th. We are looking forward to being in Israel to celebrate that momentous event. And of course, we have our 70th anniversary gift special. You can get the book and the DVD, Israel Indivisible, and the book, Israel Rising. And that's just a one-time $70 contribution, and we'd be happy to put your copy in the mail. Your donation will be autographed, the book for your donation will be autographed by me with a special note. And remember, your tax-deductible gift goes back to supporting our mission. You become a partner as a PJTN Watchman. We can't do it without you. So I think that pretty much covers our program for tonight. Again, I want to invite you all to join us next Wednesday night, same time, 6 p.m. Central Time, and we'll bring you some more news updated on what's going on around the world and how you can get involved. And I want to thank you and God bless you for all you do on behalf of our Jewish brethren and for the state of Israel. Remember, go to the website, sign up, get on our mailing list, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and help us get our message out to Christians all over the globe. God bless you, and thank you for all you do. We'll see you next week on PJTN Online. I'm your host, Laurie Cardozo Moore.